Hello, it's Therese and I'm here today in the Ellen Hutson classroom, and I have a very simple way to add some shading with your Copic markers. I've got one of the new leading ladies here, and I know you're not meant to have favourites, but I've got to say this one's high up there. She's just wonderful. Actually, she's a hero. She is an everyday hero. That's what they've called her, the everyday hero lady. Isn't she amazing? Anyway, what I'm going to do is start by colouring her with some Copic markers. I've stamped her out using some Memento Tuxedo Black. You could use any sort of Copic friendly ink here, it wouldn't matter. And I am colouring her with the markers. You can see the lids off to the side and what colours I'm using. I'm doing some fairly simple shading as I'm colouring, but I'm going to come in and show you a little trick at the end. So there's a couple of different ways that I like to add my shadows and shading. With the original colouring like I'm doing here, what I've done is I've actually come in with my darker colours first, added where the shadows are going to be, and then I bring my middle colour back and usually like to blend over with the lightest. So I usually just work back and forth until I'm sort of happy with the colour. I didn't think her cheeks were red enough, so I did come back in with the R20 and add a bit more, and that's the beauty of Copics, is that you can either add, you can remove some colour using a lighter colour or the zero colourless blender, but generally it's easier to add it in lighter layers and build your colour up. I have sped this portion of the video up because it is just the basic shading that I'm doing here. This cape that she's wearing had to be red. I didn't really have any option there today. I hope one day I'll be able to colour it in another colour, but for the moment, for the first time that I coloured it, every time I looked at it I saw red as the colour, so that's what it became. Now I don't necessarily use exact colour families for my Copics. I just use the colours that I like the look of and the colours that I have. I don't own every single Copic colour. I don't think you need to. It would be nice to, don't get me wrong, but I have some colours in every Copic family, and there are a few families that I do need more colours for, and that's the browns, so all the earth tones, and the greys. I do have a few of the different grey mixes because you can use them for so many different reasons. Alright, so I have added obvious shading where the folds of the cape are drawn in, and also around where her body's going to be, but I did keep it fairly simple. Hair is always something that can be a bit of a challenge, and usually what I like to do is colour my hair fairly early on because if I make a mistake and need to start again, I haven't actually coloured my whole image and have to start again for the whole image, just for some of it. One of the good tricks here that I'd like to share is that it coming with a darker colour than you actually think that you want to use, and the depth that that can add is amazing. And don't overwork your colours when it comes to hair. I used to blend and end up with a hot mess, but no, I just actually step back. Sometimes I'll even come back to it after a while, and sometimes if I'm feeling enthusiastic I come back with my pencils. I think pencils are a really great way to add some dimension and some details to your Copic colouring, and I feel like if you're more comfortable with pencils you might have more control, and it's a good way to mix your mediums, but today I thought I'd just stick to the Copic colours. When it comes to shading something like her shirt here, if you'll notice I haven't actually put the white or the highlight of the shirt straight down the middle, because generally things don't have highlights straight down the middle. They're not totally circle unless the sunlight is, I suppose, shining straight on them. More often than not it looks a little bit better if you do your highlight a little bit off to one side, but try and make it the same side on all the portions of your image or all the images that you're colouring. So now that I've finished my basic colouring, I'm going to add this simple shading. On these particular skin tones, I like to use the BV20, which is a blue violet colour. It's almost a grey purple, and it really does look like a shadow. I am using a very light touch because I can always come back in and add some more if I want to. I don't tend to blend this out too much because shadows can be shadows and they don't have to be blended perfectly. But if you wanted to, you could simply do that as well. On the clothes and even on other images, what I like to do is add a T2. I find the T2 works really well. So I just choose the areas on the image where I think the shadows are going to be, like on the sides of her legs and under her shirt. And then I can, if I think I've been too heavy-handed, or if I think that it looks, you know, the edges are too sharp, I'll come back in with the original colour and blend that shading out. Now this is a great way to get more from your Copic because you don't need to own every colour. By using just this one grey marker, I can add shading over pretty much this whole image, and I just adding it where the shades, where the shadow of her body would be, on the edges of clothes, on the folds where I think they can be, and it saves me a heap of time as well because I'm not coming in with lots of different markers and creating my shadows that way. I'm kind of cheating just a little bit, making it easy and fun. Alright, so this image has a coordinating set of dies, and I'm just going to run this little super lady, I like to call her, she's an everyday hero, through my die cutting machine, and I like to hold that in place with some low tack tape. Even though I have a magnetic plate, I don't want to have the chance of this moving and having to start again. I've got this Be Strong stamp set, and I'm going to white heat emboss one of the sentiments out of this set, and then I've got the die cut from the same Leading Lady stamp set, which looks like a POW speech bubble, you know, one of those really cool speech bubbles. So just lined that up, and also another die from a set that was recently released, which is Strong. I've die cut that in some black cardstock and again out of some white fun foam. Used some matte medium, just a little bit, little tiny dots on there, and I've left the sentiment in place while I line up my die cut word, the cardstock word, over top, and just going to sit that aside to dry before I try pulling that out. Otherwise it won't hold together. And this is my all-time favourite way of layering up my fine dies like that. Works beautifully every time. So I'm going to start assembling my card now. I've got a top fold white card base, adding some gorgeous pattern paper from a paper pad called Really Rainbow. It's a Lawn Fawn 6x6 paper pad. I've die cut one of the old and new Layered Cityscapes cover dies. This is the A, and just used some black cardstock and some matte medium, and I've actually die cut a second time with some grey cardstock, but I only cut the portion that I needed out of a scrap of cardstock. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically going to inlay the city with the grey cardstock. So I've added some matte medium again, and what I like about the matte medium is that if it does ooze out the sides, it dries matte, so it doesn't leave that shiny sort of adhesive residue that you can get from some of the other glues, and it's a really strong hold and dries very quickly. It is like putting a puzzle together. It's just fab. And then I can just flip over my card and actually use a pair of long straight scissors to cut that off, and that works perfectly every time too. Right, I've popped up my little leading lady with some foam squares, and she's just going to sit on the front of my card, and then all that's left to do is to add my sentiment. My little speech bubble is just going to be adhered directly onto the card front using some tape runner, and again for the sentiment I mean, if I had been thinking ahead, I probably would have used the, you know, the double-sided sheets of tape that you can buy. I probably should have actually added that to my fun foam and to my die cuts. It would have made life heaps easier. But anyway, I survived by using the matte medium, which is actually what I'm used to using. That's probably why I don't go for the other tapes. And that's my finished card for today. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back again real soon. Till next time, happy paper crafting. Bye.